said, no, I'm just going to go invite Satya, my friend, and a colleague who we kind of know are all on the Agilemania space. And today's topic, as you know, is team topologies and how to build hyper-performing teams in a big enterprise, right? So I'm not going to take much time. Satya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Preet. Hello all, and welcome again to SAFe Thursday. I am Satyajit Gantayat. You can call me Satya. I'm an Agile coach and a SAFe program consultant. As Preet mentioned, we are a close-knit group of 4 people working closely with different organizations and teams, helping them with their Agile transformation, with their SAFe implementation. And this is our way of giving back to the community, where we are sharing knowledge, whatever we gain from our interactions with different teams. So today's topic is team topologies. Again, there's a very specific, unique concept that was introduced through a book, and then how SAFe adapted to it. So we'll get started. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an online tool to collect some of those responses. Maybe so if you have your mobile phones handy, you can log into this URL. So what are we going to cover in today's agenda is, so we'll talk about Agile teams, and then what does Scaling Agile mean? And then what would be the possible challenges with Scaling Agile? And then a unique concept that SAFe has introduced is something called dual operating system. So we'll look at that, and then how do we organize around value, and how do we form this bigger team of teams? Typically, when we are trying to build an enterprise level software with hundreds of people, then how do we build the team, and what is Agile release train? And then finally, we'll talk about team topologies. I know some of you might have, if you have not heard about that book, topologies sound a little different than what the terminologies are used in the IT industry. So this is the agenda. Right? Now, what are Agile teams? I hope some of you have already logged in to the link that I had shared. So what we are going to do is, I see only 9 folks. So I'm just going to give 1 more minute for some of you to join to this URL.
So for folks who haven't seen it, Satya pasted a link in the Zoom chat, ahaslides.com. Yeah, so please copy that URL. If you go to your mobile browser, enter it there, right? Then that's where the interaction is going to happen.
Yeah.
Satya, by any chance, submission is closed? I see submission closed.
Yeah, I haven't opened yet. Once everybody logs in, I'll open for submission. Right, so let me open it now. So what are Agile teams? Cross-functional, collective ownership, self-managing, self-organized, valuable. Co-creators, that's a nice word. Capable of delivering value. All right, I think cross-functional stands out here. So let's quickly see what are Agile teams. Yes, we've been talking about cross-functional teams. They're self-managed. They are feature teams. Unlike the traditional way of project management, where we tell them component teams. Right? Here, feature teams, they deliver value at the end of a sprint or iteration. And they are collaborative. They create stories, analyze, develop, test, and deploy wherever applicable. And they deliver frequently and iteratively. Now, and we have some specialized roles called Scrum Masters and Product Owners. So this is the Agile teams. And these are the building blocks of no matter what framework you practice, but these are the building blocks of this software execution. Now, we've been talking about scaling Agile. Right? So what does scaling Agile mean? Any responses? Someone says step by step. More than one team. Okay. So scaling, so a lot of these companies, a lot of these teams, they are agile and they've been practiced Scrum maybe in their own domain or in their own space. But when it comes to building something at the enterprise level, where hundreds of people come together to build something bigger, complex system. So that's when we say it's scaling Agile. Right? There are multiple Agile teams, but working towards a common goal. And there could be multiple dependent solutions, geographically distributed teams, hundreds of developers, many different functions. Now, typically, when you are talking about building a banking application, right, you have the compliance, regulation, the security, you have hardware involved. And of course, in the multiple stakeholders, you have people from the finance, people from acquisitions and mergers, people from legal, multiple stakeholders involved, and it's a complex system. So that is what typically when we say hundreds of developers coming together to build something complex at an enterprise level, that's when we mentioned saying it's scaling Agile. Now, what could be the possible challenges when we have such a system where there are hundreds of developers and the multiple teams, multiple stakeholders? So what could be the challenges? Any ideas? What could be the scaling challenges? It's open for input. Conflicting priorities, alignment, yeah, right. Is everybody aligned to the same goal, to the same vision for the product? Priorities, dependencies, yeah, dependencies, both functional and technical. Yeah, scattered vision. So these are some of the challenges that typically we see when we have such a complex system. Lack of alignment, I think that stands out. That how do we know there's hundreds of developers are aligned to the common vision or the goal of the product? And how do we collaborate? Right? When so many teams are there, when do we collaborate and how do we collaborate? And the dependencies, functional and technical, managing requirements, because now there are multiple sources of requirements. Earlier, when we say a smaller product, one product backlog, and one product owner, now possibly we cannot really manage the system like this. And lack of common guidelines, be it technical or functional. Right? When we have so many teams working when we say self-managed, self-organized, probably everybody will have their own way of implementing something. And then we end up using so many different frameworks, so many different tools, so many different practices. But we need somebody to really guide the entire 100 to 100 people with some kind of technical guideline. And the executive need to get a bird's eye view of the entire progress. And of course, integration, when hundreds of developers are checking in their code day in, day out, we will have integration problems, and the risk management. And these are not the only problems. Probably these are the problems that stand out, but there could be multiple problems. That's why what we suggest, or what SAFe suggests is, bring all these teams together and form a team of agile teams. Right? All these cross-functional self-managed teams, the agile teams, bring them together and form a team of teams. And it could be a virtual organization of 5 to 12 teams. And they are aligned to a common vision through a common backlog. And this entire team of teams is also cross-functional, and they are synchronized on a common cadence. They have to be, they have to have the same cadence, and they also need to have same synchronization. We probably the iteration duration has to be similar for all these teams, and we start on the same day and we finish on the same day, our iterations. And we organize around value. So this team of teams, SAFe calls it as Agile Release Stream. Now, typically, Preet also mentioned during the introduction, in the recent 15th State of Agile report, 37% of organizations who are practicing the scaling framework responded saying they follow SAFe. Okay. This is just a small view of what was the outcome of the 15th State of Agile report. Now, SAFe says this team of teams is, let's call it as an Agile Release Train, right, which is a virtual organization of 5 to 12 teams. And it could be 50 to 125 individuals. Now, again, this 125 number came from a person called Dunbar. He had done some research saying human can maintain working relationship up to till probably 150 people. And they are synchronized on program increment. Okay. We were talking about synchronizing problem, and then all these 125 people, they are synchronized on program increment. Now that's the boundary they work on. And they're aligned to a common vision through a common backlog or program backlog. So, and they are organized around value, and they are cross-functional. That means if you look at the image here, again, all the image sources are from scaledagile.com. Even the art has to be cross-functional. It has to have, now when we are developing a banking application, we would need compliance, operations, security. So the art should also be cross-functional in order to build the program increments. Now, we have some specialized roles within the art. Of course, we have these agile teams, and every agile team has specialized roles like scrum masters and product owners. But at an art level, we have these specialized roles called release train engineer, who is the chief scrum master. We have product management. Again, it could be one person or a group of people who are who has the content authority for the program backlog. And to give the common guideline to all these teams, the technical common guideline, we have a system architect who works with these teams, and then also works with the product management. And we have a business owner, typically who is a senior executive or the sponsor of the art. So these are the specialized roles. Now, we have a very unique or different term here saying organized around value. Now, what does that mean? Now, what does organizing around value mean? So again, SAFe has taken a lot of concepts from a lot of good things. We have somebody called John P. Cotter, who is the renowned leader when it comes to transforming organizations. So in his book called Accelerate, he has mentioned something called a dual operating system. So I'm sure some of you might have come across this video again. This is pretty old video, I mean 2013, but still relevant. So let's see what John P. Potter says.
Hello, I'm John Cotter, and I'm here to talk to you about winning in a faster and faster moving.
Monica, I just sent you.
So just skip the ad.
Moving world, a world where more threats are coming at us from all kinds of different unpredictable directions, but also in which there are more windows of opportunity, opening and closing faster than ever. I am convinced that we've crossed a line in which the old methods that we've used to deal with this no longer work. And I want to talk to you briefly about what seems to work in this faster and faster moving world. To understand this, I found you need to understand how organizations naturally evolve over time and how that has gotten us to where we are now. All organizations start with a structure that kind of looks like a dynamic solar system or a molecule. Their advantage is that they can be very, very fast, very agile. They can run around existing competition. They start with a set of entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter if they're trying to make a new type of microchip or a new type of chocolate chip cookie.
Okay, the video
who
is
work
not being
on various
shared.
initiatives. It could be anything. Playing around with crazy ideas, talking to customers, doing things with alloys. And they can drop those initiatives and start new ones. If they're successful, though, they have to be able to make and ship a product or deliver a service. And as soon as that happens, you start to see growing something that we would recognize. It looks more like a hierarchy. It has jobs, it has processes, and if they continue to be successful, of course, it's that part that has to grow, and it grows. And for a brief time, you've got both systems that tend to be hooked together well because of the entrepreneurs who play a part in both. And sometimes the old timers that have jobs over at one side and they're still in that entrepreneurial system. But as successful as they are, you know what part grows, and it grows. And at a certain point, it doesn't like the old entrepreneurial, unpredictable, whipping around system. And so it systematically eliminates it. And you end up with what we all know, a typical modern organization. Now, in a slow enough moving world, that can work fine, and it does. But as the world starts to speed up, it doesn't. And so what smart people do is they augment it. They add strategic planning committees. They hire strategic consultants. They put together interdepartmental task forces or project management organizations to first create and then to execute strategies. And if this is done well, it works up to a point. But as the world speeds up more and more, it doesn't. So they continue along this same path. It happens naturally. You add another committee, you add work streams, you add more strategy pieces. And after a while, all of this addition actually slows you down, and the whole thing starts to sink into the muck, which obviously does not win today. It raises the question of what could win today. And actually, you just saw it a minute ago. Now, let's rewind the tape. Okay, start there and go back some more. Now stop. There it is. Something that can be reliable and efficient now and can be fast and agile in helping you maneuver through this faster moving environment. It creates more wealth, better products and services, a terrific place to work, and perhaps most importantly, profitable growth. That raises the logical question of can create that and get those results? And the answer is yes, we've proven it. A set of processes and procedures and methods can take you from wherever you're at, and you start growing that entrepreneurial piece from the center on out in an organic way. You keep the two pieces connected in a very solid way, and you end up with this mechanism that can be both reliable, efficient, fast, and agile, and win today. Here's the bad news. How many organizations have succeeded in doing that?
Ouais, puis j'ai vu la réponse de
0.01%. Really, seriously. Here's the good news. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. You can change. You can create what's needed. And when is the time to do that? No question. It's now.
Well, it is still relevant, right? A lot of organizations are struggling with, because we need the hierarchy. Somebody needs to process the salaries, somebody needs to take care of the legal aspects, right? So we need a people manager. But again, hierarchies are needed. The solution is not to trash the hierarchy, but how can we be more nimble, more agile, and then respond to the customer faster the way we were doing when we were probably like a startup? That's taking some cues from this book, right? What SAFe says is we need the hierarchical systems for efficiency and stability, but we also need to organize our teams around customers, because it's all about customer. Customer centricity is primarily the culture of the organization if we were to stay relevant. And that's why we need to build a faster moving network. And that is where we are talking about dual operating system. Now, how could we possibly do it? Right? So how do we build teams around? Sorry, somebody was asking something? All right. So what we are saying is, how do we build form our teams around the flow of value? Now, let's look at some example. Most of us, we know, right, the operational value streams, right, where we have a concept, and then the series of steps that we take to move towards cash, the concept to cash concept of operational value streams. So these are the series of steps. This is an example of a loan, right? And then there is a loan need, and then the first step obviously is to attract customers. And then when the customers come in, we provide a quick rate quote. And then once they complete the loan application, we have an eligibility decision and underwriting. And then we take a decision whether a person, based on the data that is provided in the loan application, whether somebody is eligible for the loan. And once we find the eligibility, extend loan terms, and finally award the loan. We set up payment process, and the customer starts repaying loan, and then finally we close the loan. So the organization gets.
Bon, moi, il y a quand même un truc qui me dérange dans.
So this is where we are saying
dans cette affaire.
Yes. Payment.
C'est que, comment dire.
We have, these are the series of steps. This makes the operational value stream. Now we need the software systems which make these steps possible. And probably we need a channels software system which will attract the customers, and then we have a loan origination system which will make the second and third step possible, and we will have a credit scoring system, a software system that will do the eligibility decision and underwriting. And then we have core banking, which does all the banking, the core banking steps. extending loan terms, avoiding loan, setting up payment process, repaying loan, and closing the loan. Now, in a typical large organization, we will have different teams who are capable of building all these different software systems. Now, let's look at, say, we have 80 people in US, Atlanta plus Redmond, and then we have 230 people in India, Bangalore and Delhi, who are capable of building the channels and load nodes in the system. And then we have a team in Eastern Europe, Estonia, who are capable of building the credit scoring system. And we have around 80 people in Chicago and 120 people in Hyderabad who are capable of building the core banking system. So in a bigger organization, typically we have geographically distributed teams who are capable of building different kinds of software systems. So what we do is we identify our operational value stream first, and then we identify the software systems to make this operational value stream possible. And we find out which teams are capable of building this software systems. And this is known as our development value stream. Now, this is possibly one development value stream, which we can call it a loan application development value stream. And then this could be another value stream. We could call it core banking development value stream. So once we identify these, we form our agile release streams around it. So that is organizing around value. I think SAFe had introduced in SAFe 5.0 the principle number 10, which is organizing around value. Okay. This is how we create our dual operating system, our fast moving network, which is customer centric, right? While we keep our existing hierarchy for stability. Now, what could be the challenges with bigger systems, with bigger teams? Any thoughts? Now we said, we've identified this bigger value streams. We bring in hundreds of developers. Now we form team of teams, which is the agile release stream, and we have 8 to 12 teams, agile teams within 1 hour. Now, what could be the challenges with such bigger systems?
Inter-team coordination.
Mm-hmm. No, we took care of a lot of things by forming our art and then bringing in these different roles, and then aligning them through a single backlog called program backlog. But now think about, we are saying every team is self-organized and self-managed. Now banking system, probably there is a lot of security that one need to understand. There are a lot of hardware integration that one needs to understand. Now, this is where we are talking about the cognitive load of the agile teams. So as an agile team, we are focused on delivering value, working on those features, which are the upcoming business requirements. But imagine we also need to know about how does the security work. We also need to know about how does the hardware integration work. Now we also need to know how do we call these APIs and pull the data from different sources. Now this increases the cognitive load of these agile teams. Right? Probably there are different kinds of systems. There is a C++ compiler somewhere, and now there are millions of codes. It's not really possible for these agile teams to know everything about such a complex system. And before we talk about how do we resolve it, now there is something called Conway's law. So Conway's law says any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. It's like shipping your organizational hierarchy. What he says is, whatever you write, the software systems or the architecture that you build will mirror your organization's communication structure or the hierarchical structure. So if you have smaller distributed teams, probably small teams, distributed teams, they are more likely to produce software which are modular service architecture. And if you have large co-located teams, they are likely to produce monolithic architecture. This was way back in 1968, 69, Conway had written. Now, in what we are talking about is, we are talking about the small agile teams, bringing them together, forming an art, but these agile teams still need to understand the billions of lines of code a complex system will have. Right? And that is where we have a book called Team Topologies, written by Manuel Pais and Matthew Skelton. Now, before we go to, before we understand what they have written, so if the agile teams, if you find that the flow of value is blocked, right? Now, as an agile team, we are working on a particular business requirement, and then suddenly we see that we need to integrate with security. Suddenly we need to understand how to integrate with the hardware system. And the software is usually too big for our teams. And if your flow of value is blocked, if the software is too big for your teams, organization design options are confusing, and you get too many surprises with technology and markets. There are too many components involved in the entire software or entire bigger product, which leads to pushing against the Conway's law and teams being pulled into many directions. Now, we were supposed to be focused on our business features, right? The value that we are supposed to give it to produce for our customers. Now we are being pulled in many directions because we need to understand this and all these nitty-gritties of the complex system. Now we are disengaged, and then again we have a painful reorg every few years. And that is why what we want to do is taking a team first approach, using Conway's law to define our architecture, and utilizing the 4 fundamental team topologies. Right? And that is where we are leveraging on what Manuel Pais and Matthew Skelton has written in their book called Team Topologies, where we are restructuring our teams, this team of teams, and then there is a topology evolution, and then there is an improved flow and happy teams. Now let's look at what they are saying. In this book, they're saying to build a complex system, yes, we need to have this organizing around value. Now we have formed a team of teams, but to ease their cognitive load, now we have to have these 4 different types of teams within one art. Now we'll look at each of these specialized teams and what they are. So one is the complicated subsystem team, one is the platform team, another is stream aligned teams, and these teams are typically the teams which are developing the features or the business value. So these are called the stream aligned teams. And enabling team, probably a short-lived team to work on a new technology. Again, we'll explore all these 4 teams in detail, and mapping that team, these teams in team topologies. Within an agile release team, we can have stream aligned teams, which are probably the majority of the art, right? Which are focused on developing value or working on features in the SAFe language. The features are part of the program backlog, and a complicated subsystem team, and then enabling team and a platform team. So we'll look at each of these. But before we go there, this is what SAFe suggests. If you have to form an art with hundreds of people together, then probably we should look at forming the art in this fashion, with 4 different specialized teams. Now, stream aligned teams are the feature teams that we can call, and these are organized around the flow of work. These are the teams that deliver value. Right? They are aligned to a value stream. That's what we looked at. sometime back. How do we find operational value stream, and then how do we find out our different teams who are capable of building the software systems, and then organizing around it. And streamlined teams are typically customer centric, right? And they are cross-functional. They make the bigger chunk of the team of teams. So that is the agile teams that you can relate to. And then we have something called we have something called complicated subsystem teams. Right? So streamlined teams, they are, how do you form, what are the responsibilities? They know your customer, they develop a steady flow of new features, and then they apply design thinking. Like design thinking again is a concept of, how do you know what does your customer need? Now, how do you know what requirements to build in order to help your customers solve their problems? There are multiple design thinking tools like empathy map, and then Gemba walk, and then user journey map. So, and then applying continuous improvement practices, through, again, inspect and adapt, through different retrospectives, through looking back, how do we improve? How do you focus on continuous improvement? And then building quality, right from, not by inspecting, but building quality right from the way we develop our code. And the streamlined teams, they collaborate, they respond to customers' needs, and support the solution in production. So this is the streamlined teams, and typically these are the feature teams that build value. Now, complicated subsystem team. Now, imagine that when you have something like a banking application or a trading platform, you'll have a lot of these different systems, legacy systems. Probably, I'm sure some of you who have worked in a financial application would know that a lot of these backend processes are done still in COBOL or AS400, right? What we call them as green screens. And probably this was written some 25, 30 years ago, and we are not really ready to migrate it or upgrade it to the latest technology. So you'll find such kind of legacy systems in a complex environment, in a complex product. So, and possibly we cannot have experts of AS400 or COBOL within each agile teams, and probably we don't need also, right? You have a legacy system in a trading platform which does the the final trading, and where probably even microseconds matter, and that's why probably we are not very comfortable migrating it yet, and that's why these legacy systems still exist. And for some features we might need to integrate with these kind of legacy systems. So that is why we really don't need the AS400 or COBOL or C++ experts in all of these agile teams. But what we say is we will have a dedicated team who are experts of these legacy systems. So they are organized around specific subsystems or the legacy systems that might exist in the software or in the product. And they are specialists with deep specialty skills. And they build and maintain and support the complicated subsystem team. So whenever there is anything new to be done with the legacy systems, these complicated subsystem team, they build and maintain. Now, and whenever these streamlined teams which are working on these features or building the business value, if they need some kind of integration with these subsystem teams, the complicated subsystem team, they come and help them. So it's basically saying they catch the fish for the streamlined teams, because we don't have experts. We might not have experts of COBOL or AS400 or C++ in these agile teams. So they plan and prioritize effectively and develop appropriate interfaces, maybe the APIs for other teams to consume, and they take responsibility for building quality for their complicated subsystem. So a complicated subsystem team is a highly specialized team in a specific skill, which, if required, they help the other feature teams or the stream aligned teams in integrating with the complicated subsystem. And we have a platform team, again, as Agile says, similar to the requirements, we really don't need to build the entire design right from the beginning. No, we don't need to build the entire architecture right from the beginning. So even the architecture also is built incrementally. Right? We don't want to build, take 6 months and build the entire architecture for our product. Of course, there has to be some kind of initial architecture that is ready for other feature teams to consume. But this platform team, again, they reduce the cognitive load of the stream aligned teams. So the stream aligned teams don't need to know everything about the architecture. They don't really need to build the architecture. So that is where we have a platform team dedicated to build the architecture of the product for the other feature teams or stream aligned teams to consume. They could be some underlying internal services. They could be the security framework. They could be, the APIs, which is picking data from different sources, and then the feature teams, they call the API to use or consume the data. So they build the platform incrementally. So obviously, when we are talking about platform, again, we are not building the entire platform right from the beginning, and we are building the platform incrementally. And they collaborate with stream aligned teams. And so the stream aligned teams, they depend on the platform team so that they can consume the platform to build their own features. And they commit to support and maintain the architectural platform. Now, we have something called enabling team, right? Now, in any of when we are trying to build this complicated or complex product, a lot of times we need to work with new technologies. So maybe we said, hey, this website, let's build in React and Node. And we might not have possibly React and Node experts in all of these Agile teams. So what we can do is probably, out of these 7, 8 Agile teams, we have 3, 4 experts in these different teams. We can bring them together and form an enabling team, right, which can educate, which can train the other people, other folks in React and Node up until they get up to speed with that new technology. So we form a short-lived temporary team primarily to work on new practices and technology. And these are not different people. They are already part of the stream aligned teams and kind of form a virtual team. And once people are familiar with the new technology, they are now up to speed, then we can dissolve this enabling team and probably to work with the new technology, we can form another enabling team. Okay. So they help stream aligned teams acquire missing capabilities, get hands-on knowledge on new technologies. They provide support and guidance to stream aligned teams. There are some examples like we have, suddenly we said, okay, hey, we need to have a DevOps implementation. There has to be a CI/CD pipeline. Now, not every Agile team have experts who are capable of setting up the CI/CD pipeline. Maybe we form a small DevOps team, enabling team, and probably they can take a session once or twice in a week so that everybody gets up to speed with how to set up the entire CI/CD pipeline. Automated testing. Now, we might not have test automation engineers in all the Agile teams or the Stream Align teams. So now, how to use a tool like Cucumber or any of the automation tools. So they can form a virtual organization, train the other folks, and then once everybody knows how to write test automation, they can dissolve. So these are some of those examples of enabling team. Because enabling teams may also be focused on helping Stream Align teams. The first few times they need to integrate with a specific subsystem or platform. However, enabling teams are not there to fix quality issues caused by Stream Align teams. Rather, they work with them for short periods, typically for a PI or so, to increase their skills and embed the required capabilities. Depending on their charter, enabling teams may be persistent and move to support another team or art or part of the organization, or they may be created for a specific purpose and then be decommissioned and returned to their regular work. That's why typically what we say is enabling teams are usually short-lived teams. So these are different teams that SAFe suggests, getting inspired from the book called Team Topologies by Skelton and Manuel Pais. The same, this is how we need to, for a better flow and to reduce the cognitive load of these different Stream Align teams, we need to form our art like this. So this is SAFe suggests, and now why SAFe? Obviously, there's a little bit of marketing for SAFe. 30% happier, more motivated employees, 50% faster time to market, 50% defect reduction, and 35% increase in productivity. These statistics are extracted from all the customer stories that are published in scaledagile.com. So that's about it from me. Now we can take questions if you have. Any questions on how do you form a platform team, or what is an enabling team? What do they do? Very quiet crowd.
Yeah.
Hey, Ratal, if there are no questions, I'll quickly ask one. You talked about enabling team, calling them as short-living teams. So what about platform and complicated subsystem teams? Can we also consider them as short-lived team? Like as soon as their responsibility is done, they get dissolved and get to the next start or next PI?
Well, usually no, because as we discussed, usually the complicated subsystem team, they are now in any application that we mentioned, right? Now a banking application, you have this legacy system still living in the product, which does all the the back-end financial processes. Written probably ages ago, decades ago in AS400 or COBOL or C++. And they continue to exist for some time. And now, whenever we have all these feature teams working on a particular feature, not necessarily all the features, but sometimes they need to integrate with these legacy systems. So this legacy system will continue to exist, and usually this complicated system team will also continue to exist, and they keep helping the feature teams in integrating their work whenever there is a need. Unlike the enabling team.
So, Satya, I just have a question, Satya. Like regarding this Scaled Agile framework, what specialty or what exactly in Scaled Agile framework feature makes it attractive or applicable to the customer when you compare it to the other Scaling Agile frameworks? What is outstanding in SAFe to really get accepted, like Satya?
Yeah. Now, one thing which stands out is if you look at any of the frameworks, be it framework designed to build smaller products like Scrum, or something like Spotify or any of the other scaling frameworks. Most of the frameworks, they talk about, or rather say, except SAFe, other frameworks talk about execution. Right? How do we build the product? So no other framework really talks about the strategy formulation. So how do you decide which product to build? How do you decide how much to invest in which product? Now, we still have most of the organizations, we still have most of these have the legacy way of doing an annual budgeting. And then finally we'll say, okay, hey, for this year, we are going to build these products, invest in these products, and we still have that. But that is where the differentiator comes in with SAFe. Now, SAFe doesn't only talk about execution, but also talks about the strategic layer. Right? How do you have, and that's where we have something called a different competency called lean portfolio management.
Yeah.
That is what makes SAFe different from any of the other scaling.
Sure. Thanks, Satya. Very nice. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Hi, Satya. This is Rohit here.
Yeah, Rohit, go ahead.
I have one question regarding SAFe. We asked about the framework, right, and how this will work. So when we learned Agile, we learned that what will be each individual's role and how they will function and how the team will be complete, right? What each individual will do. We learned about that. So how to learn in SAFe whose responsibility is what? So do you encourage us to do some certification so that we learn about it, or is there any better way to do all those learning in past so that we can implement those learnings in our work?
Yeah. So now we started with this small Scrum teams, right? And that's how, even my discussion when I started, we started with Agile teams. And then, or, in Scrum framework, we call them Scrum teams. And then probably it works better for smaller products. But as and when we grow as an organization, if you look at something like we had a startup, and then suddenly we started growing, and then we started hiring more developers. So this is one way of looking at how are we growing, how are we scaling up. Now suddenly we have hundreds of developers working for the same product. And this is where we are talking about scaling challenges, right? Yes, the building block is still the Agile teams, the Scrum teams, which are practicing probably Kanban or Scrum at the team level. But when we all these hundreds of developers coming together, that is where we have challenges of alignment, dependencies, the prioritization, and that is where we are talking about the advantages of practicing SAFe. And of course, the starting point would be to get trained and then understand now we are talking about release train engineer. What does a release train engineer do? We're talking about product management, how product management is different from product owners. We have been here, learning about product owners, product backlog, product owners. Now, what does the product management do? So we need to understand. So obviously, the starting point is to, I'm not really selling training here, but obviously, getting trained would enhance your knowledge, and then now you can understand why we are doing it. What does the program backlog do? How to form a program backlog? What does product management do? What is the role of business owners? And all these clarifications probably will be much better clarified in a training. Did I answer?
Yes, Satya.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're kind of 8 minutes over the top of the hour. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. So if you still have any more questions, please do not hesitate to drop an email. You can reach us out on LinkedIn, or now we even have our own website, right? Please do write into us and then reach out to us for any questions that you might have. And please also do remember, we are having the next event of SAFe Thursday on the 3rd of February, where we're going to do a new format, which is ask an SPCT any question that you might have around SAFe. Yeah. So please head over to safethursday.com and please register yourself so you can be informed on how to register or how to get to the session. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask the SPCT, please do send it. Right, we are kind of compiling all the questions that we are getting so that we can directly ask the SPCT on that day. Yeah. So thank you very much, and please stay tuned for SAFe Thursday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.